So it's to me an enormous honour to be able to say to you, I'm speaking on behalf of the Labour Party in remembering the life of Harry Leslie Smith, and our condolences to John and all that he's had to go through, and the lovely words that he wrote to me to say that he will carry on his dad's work. Well, John, yes you will, but you won't be alone, because we're all going to carry on Harry Leslie's work. Harry was born in Barnsley in 1923 to Lillian and Albert, an unemployed coal miner, living in desperate poverty in the 1920s in a country that was supposed to be building homes fit for heroes at the end of the Second World War. His eldest sister died, as he explained, in 1926, aged 11, of the wholly preventable condition of TB in the poorhouse because the family couldn't afford a doctor. Harry suffered all through the privations of the 1920s and 1930s, the general strike, when the union movement was defeated by a Tory government, but never really defeated because we always come back, and all through the Depression. And then came the Second World War, and Harry joined up, he joined the RAF, and as he said in one of his speeches, and I was quite moved by it, he said it was the first time in his life, remember this, born in 1923, was 1941, that he got 3 meals a day in the forces, in the RAF. And he witnessed what was going on at the end of the Second World War, and ended up in Germany at the end of the Second World War, where he met his wife, Frida. They were not allowed to marry because of some law in Britain that British and German people were not allowed to marry because we'd been at war. We were at war with fascism, not with German people. Couldn't they have ever understood that when they wrote that law? And Harry then returned. He returned to a country that had been ravaged by the Second World War and wanted to change things around. Because they couldn't marry, I understand, they emigrated to Canada, where Harry worked there, and they had children, 3 sons. Sadly, only John survives. Harry learnt a lot from that life and from the death of his sons. And that inspired him to turn to writing. And he wrote the book, Harry's Last Stand. And I was just saying to the publishers when we were coming in, why didn't Harry take up writing 50 years earlier? Why leave it so late? Because the book is absolutely brilliant. And Harry was not afraid of using social media, and indeed had 250,000 followers on Twitter. He was, as Owen said, a giant of our movement. He could capture people's attention and appealed to all generations. Because his was a real-life experience, the son of a miner, growing up in the Great Depression, caring for an ill sister, and defeating fascism. That is what turned Harry into a socialist. He hated poverty because he'd grown up in poverty. He hated class privilege because his sister had died at the age of 11, and the family couldn't afford the medical care that she needed, just like thousands and thousands of others died in desperate poverty during that period. And as one who had seen what war was about and what it was like, and the bombing and the effect it had on civilian people, be those civilians in Germany or in Britain or in France or anywhere else, or those that died in Russia, he saw the reality of war, and he had lost friends in that war. So he dedicated his life to peace. And he hated racism and bigotry because he'd seen what fascism had done to Germany, and he had seen what bigotry had done to his own family. So he had this humane decency about him, this socialism about him, and it made him into a genuine internationalist. He realized there was nothing inevitable about poverty. There was nothing inevitable about it. It had to be challenged, it had to be fought for and changed in a different way. He was a man of the most unbelievable level of optimism. And as Owen was saying, in 1945, at the end of the Second World War, all those young men and women that took off their uniforms and put on their working clothes and wanted to build a country that was decent, that was fair, that was just. Every newspaper, particularly, by the way, the Daily Mail, predicted the Tories would win the 1945 election by a landslide led by Winston Churchill. How wrong they were in measuring the feelings of ordinary people. And by the way, they've got it wrong a few times since then as well. And that election resulted in a Labour government committed to social change, committed to building houses, committed to building a national health service, committed to a moral empowerment of people of the kind of world you could live in. That was achieved by people like Harry, who gave their all to ensure that we had a national health service in the future. Because Harry also, yes, was passionate about the NHS, yes, was passionate about mental health, yes, was passionate about social care, but he was also passionate about the decency we need within our society. And